Hey, happy Tuesday morning to you, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Listen, before I get into my video this morning, I want to thank everyone, so many of you, for sending me private messages and even emails asking, hey, are you okay? Where were you Monday? Many of you concerned about my health, and I do appreciate that so very, very much. And I mean that sincerely. I wasn't sick. I wasn't ill. The truth of the matter is, I was just up to here in work. I just couldn't get everything done, and so I thought, well, pardon me, I've just got to dive right in to my correspondence. I'm just going to pay attention to that, and I'll pick up my morning musings today on Tuesday. So hope that's okay. All right. Thanks again for so many of you saying, where did you go? I got to have my morning musings. And by the way, speaking of that, man, it's just so cool of all of the different places that I'm hearing from. I'm hearing from Trinidad, obviously Africa, Egypt, Israel, South America, Indonesia. As a matter of fact, this upcoming Saturday, I will be having a Zoom meeting with a group of believers from Indonesia. Oh, and then on Friday, I will be having a Zoom interview with a gentleman from Great Britain who is doing a series of interviews with scholars on the various views of eschatology, and particularly the Olivet Discourse, which works real well since that's what I've been involved in studying for so long here. So, exciting things are happening. Please keep that in your prayers. Keep me in your prayers for my good health, that I can continue to take advantage of those opportunities. And by the way, need to make mention of the fact that William Bell is likewise doing some incredibly important and incredibly exciting stuff. He's getting more and more invitations to go back to Africa and to minister in different countries over there, in different regions. So, boy, I tell you, there's some wonderful stuff going on. Okay. We are continuing our study of the Olivet Discourse. We've been focused for several months now on Matthew 25, 1 to 13. As I have shared with you, the consensus of scholarship is that in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, obviously the parallel passages, Jesus had predicted the destruction of the city and the temple. In response, the apostles asked, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your parousia and the end of the age? Commentators come to those questions and they say, well, you see, what's happening here is that the apostles were so stunned by Jesus' prediction of the impending destruction, they automatically thought, this was John Calvin's view, they could not imagine that event happening unless it was at the end of time, the end of the current age. So, in the mind of most scholars today, although I got to tell you things are changing, but in the mind of most scholars today, the apostles were confused. Now, don't forget, I've written a brand new book on this entitled Watching for the Parousia, Were Jesus' Apostles Confused? And I address this issue head on. You need to be watching Friday as I continue with video number 6 in my response to Kenneth Gentry, who recently wrote 4 articles attacking this book. But as long as I'm doing my videos in response to Dr. Gentry, I'll be offering this book at $15.95 plus shipping. That's $2 off. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and order the book, Watching for the Parousia, Were Jesus' Apostles Confused? Because here's the bottom line. If Jesus' apostles were not confused to connect the Christ's coming and the end of the age with the fall of Jerusalem, then futurism falls to the ground. If the apostles were correct, if the Bible, if the Old Testament links the coming of the Lord, the judgment, the resurrection, the end of the age, with the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, futurism is dead. It's that simple. So we've been spending a good deal of time on Matthew chapter 25, 1 to 13, demonstrating, pardon me, that the parable about the coming of the bridegroom for the wedding is taken from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel to bring the Old Covenant world, the Old Covenant marriage between God and Israel, God and Judah specifically, bring that covenant world to an end to create the new covenant world of the Messiah, what we sometimes call the New Covenant age, what we sometimes call the Christian age, what we sometimes call the church age, what we sometimes call the Messianic age. Every one of those descriptions refers to the same thing and looks back at the end of the Old Covenant age, the Mosaic age, that occurred with the fall of Jerusalem and the temple in AD 70. Now, if that is the case, if the coming of the Lord for the wedding in Matthew 25, 1 to 13, is about the end of the Old Covenant world of Israel, to use the word Israel in a comprehensive term there, and it's not about the coming of the Lord at the end of the Christian age, then let me repeat this. Futurism is dead. And so I've been spending a lot of time sharing with you the Old Testament prophecies, some of them. I haven't shared all of them with you by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been sharing with you some of the Old Testament prophecies that foretold the coming of the Lord for the wedding. And invariably, those prophecies are dealing with the coming of the Lord for the wedding at the time of the judgment of Judah and Jerusalem, the Old Covenant harlot, adulterous bride, to put her to death, and to reconstruct, redefine, recreate Israel as the body of Christ, inclusive of all men, the righteous remnant of Old Covenant Israel and the nations, to create one new man, Ephesians 2:15 and following. Now, we've covered Isaiah chapter 62. I had to get all that preliminary stuff in there. So I want to begin a study. No way in this world am I going to cover this passage in one video, or even two, or even three. Okay? But I want us to turn our attention now to Isaiah chapter 65. Now, I said that Isaiah 62 was one of my favorites. Well, yes, it is. It is. Pardon me. But Isaiah 65 is slightly above it. Isaiah 65 serves as a foundational text for a great deal of New Testament eschatology. And when we look at Isaiah 65, as it is used by the New Testament writers, we quickly discover there is no way exegetically, hermeneutically, logically, and properly to apply it to our future. It cannot be done. So today, I'm just going to begin by introducing Isaiah 65, 1 and 2. Now, why am I starting at Isaiah 65, 1 and 2? Well, I'm doing that because Paul in Romans 10, 20 and 21, quotes both of these verses verbatim. Now what that means is, and here's a little lesson in hermeneutic. What I'm about to share with you is recognized by world-class scholars such as N.T. Wright, Richard Hayes, R.T. France, Scott McKnight, and a host of other world-class scholars, okay? It's not anything that I made up. And if you want some of that documentation from those scholars about what I'm about to share with you, you contact me. I will be more than happy to share some quotes from these scholars in which they say exactly what I'm about to share with you. So here it is. In Hebraic hermeneutic, as understood in the first century, when a writer or a speaker quotes from an Old Testament context, prophecy, they may only quote a given term, but a term that is linked distinctively to that Old Covenant text. They may only quote a given phrase, but it is a phrase that anyone familiar with the Tanakh, the Old Testament, would have recognized immediately was from that specific text. And here's where it gets critical. It was understood widely in Hebraic hermeneutic that when a writer or speaker quoted, cited, alluded to, or to use Richard Hayes' term, echoed an Old Testament text, that speaker or writer was bringing that entire prophetic context to the mind of the reader or to the listener. So what does that mean? That means that in Romans chapter 10, 20 and 21, when Paul quotes Isaiah 65, 1 and 2 verbatim, and he applied it to the state of Israel of his day, and he applied it to his personal ministry to the Gentiles, that Paul was bringing the entire prophetic context of Isaiah 65 to the mind of his readers in Romans chapter 10. Oh, and I might also add chapter 11. We'll get to that. Folks, this is incredibly significant because it means that the entire prophecy of Isaiah 65, not just verses 1 and 2, but the entire prophecy was in Paul's mind and being applied to his day, his time, and his ministry. And that means that the coming of the Lord for the wedding, the coming of the Lord for the new creation was to be in the first century. And that means that Matthew 25, 1 to 13, was fulfilled in the first century, meaning that the Olivet Discourse is not divided. It's about one subject, the coming of the Lord for the wedding in AD 70. And thus, Kenneth Gentry's attack on my book, Watching for the Parousia, where Jesus' apostles confused, is falsified before he ever goes to press with his new book. It means the 4 articles that he wrote just recently attacking this book are moot and false. That's why you need to get a copy of this book. Listen, we got a whole lot more, obviously. I mean, we just barely got started here. So, hey, and don't forget my January 2021 3-book special. Elijah has come, AD 70, a shadow of the real end, ? And can you believe Jesus said this? Go to my website. There's a banner right up at the very, very top. Just click on it. Save yourself almost $20 on the January special of those 3 books. So take advantage of that. Listen, I'm out of time. I will see you on the flip side. Be sure to read Isaiah 65, 1 and 2, and Romans 10, 20 and 21. Okay? I'll see you tomorrow.